Sky Mobile sponsors the transfer window on Sky Sports News.
Let's get straight to it with Manchester City, who've agreed a deal of £55.5 million with Rennes for winger Jeremy Doku. Right, Sam, how good is he?
Well, I think he's one of the most exciting wingers in the world right now, and that's a lot for a 21-year-old that's playing in League. And I think he's exactly what City need at the moment. You know, they've lost Mahrez, and over the years they've lost that directness. I think Pep did say last season that he wants more ball retention from his wide men. We've seen Grealish and Foden, we've seen Bernardo Silva play out wide as well. But with Doku, he's so direct, he's so electric, and his stats don't really complement the type of footballer he is. He's only scored 6 goals and had 2 assists in 29 appearances. But I think as he's got older and more matured, you're seeing a lot more output from him, and defenders really struggling to keep up with him. And I think he's going to be the perfect wide man for Pep's system, especially because now we're seeing a lot of teams. We've seen it in the last few years anyway with Pep, where teams just bank 2 banks of 4, very hard to break down at times. And I think he's the type of player that will make anything happen at any moment.
So why do they actually need a winger then, Dave?
Well, I think Manchester City have started the season with Kyle Walker playing mostly down the right-hand side. He's been offering the most width. He played the most width. He had the most width against Newcastle United. They've obviously lost Riyad Mahrez. They've obviously got Cole Palmer still in the squad. But I think from Jeremy Doku's point of view, he's coming to a team where he is going to get opportunities in the first team. That's firstly good for him. And he's an absolute dribbling machine, isn't he? He is so good on the ball. He's right-footed, but he's also very good on his left foot, so he can play either side for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. So from Pep's point of view, he gets a little bit of versatility. He made his debut for Anderlecht at 16. And this just shows, I mean, Sam mentioned his goals and assists there, but his successful take-ons absolutely through the roof. And obviously dribbles per game higher than both Mahrez and Grealish. That just shows how good he is on the ball and taking on players. Made his debut for Anderlecht at 16. Similar kind of coming through the ranks like Romelu Lukaku and Yuri Tielemans at Anderlecht. Played with Vincent Kompany. I wonder whether Pep Guardiola picked up the phone to Vincent Kompany and said, look, how good is he? How good can he be? And he was picked for the Euros, and he was a bit of a wild card, really, for Belgium in the European Championships a couple of years ago. And he was very good on the ball, very good at taking on players, but his end product wasn't quite there. He has improved since then. Yeah,
he played in the World Cup as well. He only played, I think, the last 18 minutes against Croatia, you know, the game that they went out. But I think a lot of Belgian fans were calling for him to be played because, like I said, he's one of those players that he's very unpredictable, he's very raw, but when he gets at defences, anything can happen. And I think for Pep's system now, I think only Vinicius Junior and Lionel Messi had more dribbles than him last season. That is exactly the type of player that you want to, you know, almost build on and say, you know, we've got Alvarez, we've got Haaland, they've got quite a few youngsters in their team that can become world beaters, and I think he can definitely fit into that mould.
Even, you know, a lot of the top clubs have had Doku on their list for quite a long time.
Chelsea were linked with him at one point.
I think The Guardian even reported that just before he turned 16, he visited Liverpool, met the manager, met some of the players as well, and Liverpool were really excited by him and wanted to sign him even at such a young age. So he's been on the radar for a long time of these top clubs.
Olivia, just recap Manchester City's summer transfer business so far.
Yeah, they brought in Mateo Kovacic, obviously Premier League experience. We know what he offers. Josko Gvardiol, one of the most exciting young centre-backs in world football. Of course, they did sell Mahrez, Gundogan left on a free. They obviously sold a lot of youngsters as well for around the £10-15 million mark, and that's where it's added up. Now, I still think that they need a midfielder that contributes goals. Now, they've lost 21 goals and 38 assists. That's with Kevin De Bruyne being injured out for however long he's out for, a couple of months, 3 or 4 months, and Gundogan leaving. So I still feel like they need that to add to their squad.
You don't think Foden could step up?
Maybe, but we haven't seen that yet enough from Phil Foden. He might be the player. I mean, he played so brilliantly in midfield against Newcastle. That performance was so good. But we're still yet to see whether he can, because Gundo, in those big moments, he was so clutch. He was like that player for Manchester City last season, even seasons before that as well. And I think they'll miss him so much. Obviously, we know what they'll miss with KDB for those few months. But I think in terms of Manchester City's business, the fact they've got youngsters out for 10, 15 million, and quite a few of them, it means their net spend spend is only around 70 million this summer, which is less than Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City and Newcastle. And I think they've bought smart. They've bought players in areas which I think everyone here and probably people at home will be sitting and thinking, perhaps they needed those players, and I think they've done some really smart business this summer.
And if you think about it, Dave, we were talking about this last week when it comes to net spend. You've got to sell well as buy well.
Manchester City have always been good at selling players at the right time. For the most part, anyway, they have brought through players that they've been able to loan out and then make some money on sales. So Manchester City have been very, very good at selling players at the right time as well when their stock is at their highest.
Yeah. OK, well, let's find out more about Doku then, because joining us live now is French football expert Tom Williams. Tom, good morning to you. We know that this is a big fee, but is he worth it?
Good morning, guys. I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? It is a lot of money for a young player who's still in the early stages of his career. But in terms of raw materials, you have everything you could possibly want from an attacking player. As the guys have been saying, Jeremy Doku is absolutely rapid, beats players for fun. His stats in terms of goals and assists aren't quite where they could be, where they should be. But under a coach like Pep Guardiola, you'd think that he's only going to get better. So, yeah, almost limitless potential, a lot of money, but you can understand why City have decided that he's the guy they want to bring in.
There's no doubt that Guardiola and the recruitment team will have done their due diligence on the player. How does he fit in to City's style of play? What can the fans expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a different kind of attacking player to the players that Guardiola's currently got at his disposal. Very quick, a bit of a throwback winger in a way, can play on the left, can play on the right. My suspicion is that City are signing him to play more on the right than on the left. And as a predominantly right-footed player, he's someone who isn't necessarily, cutting infield, heading into the penalty area, although he can do that. He's more about sort of beating a fullback on the outside, getting to the byline. And I guess his job in that respect will be supplying City's other attacking players with those cutbacks that Pep Guardiola loves so much. So he'd bring a pace and a directness and a dribbling ability that I don't think City really have in their squad currently. I mean, not since Raheem Sterling. I don't think they've had a player who combines that pace with that explosive dribbling ability. And Guardiola's always loved dribblers. He's spoken in the past about how valuable it is to have in your squad, players who are capable of just producing something out of nothing. And Jeremy Doku is absolutely one of those sorts of players.
Yeah, I was going to make the point that he does sound more like Sterling than he does like Mahrez, who I suppose Mahrez was playing on the right last season. He'd probably be filling in that position, but he does sound more like Sterling. Do you think he'll need a lot of time to adapt to this league? Because the kind of player like that seems to suit the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, he's got everything that you'd want for an attacking player arriving in the Premier League. I don't think the pace of the Premier League will be a problem for him, and it may be something that he takes a bit of time to adapt to. I don't think the physicality will be an issue because he's quite a stocky little player, who sort of bounces off defenders with ease. But as we've seen so many times in the past, it does take time for players to get to grips with the kind of football that Guardiola likes his teams to play. I think particularly attacking players. So I'd be surprised if Doku walked straight into the starting 11. But then I think given his age and given the amount of experience he has, I'm not sure that would be his expectation in the first place. So he's probably going to be eased in gently, perhaps used as an impact player initially. I think the most striking thing about Doku when you watch him is just how much fun he is. I mean, unless you're an opposition fullback or an opposition manager, he's someone who's just great to watch. Really gets people on the edges of their seats, and it may take him a little bit of time to find his feet, but I think City fans are going to have a lot of fun watching him.
Away from Doku, let's talk about Jonathan David, because his name comes up in transfer windows, and there are some reports linking him with a move to the Premier League.
Yeah, Jonathan David, a striker who seems to have been linked with the big Premier League clubs pretty much every summer and every winter for the last few years, but is still at Lille. I mean, he was one of the key players in their Ligue 1 title win in 2020-21. He's one of the few players from that team who's still there. I mean, most of the players from that squad have been sold on. The expectation all along has been that David will leave at some point. He won't come cheap. He's proven himself in Ligue 1 these last 3 seasons. He's scored more goals year on year in each of those 3 seasons. Got 24 in Ligue 1 last season, so he's behind only Kylian Mbappe and Alexandre Lacazette. But as things stand, he's still a Lille player, and Paulo Fonseca, the Lille coach, was speaking about him recently and said that the club haven't had offers for him, and that as things stand, they're preparing to go into the season with him. But at the same time, as we all know, sometimes it only takes the first domino to fall in the transfer market when it comes to strikers, and suddenly you get strikers moving all over the place. So probably want to keep an eye on. Yeah,
we'll be back with you in just 1 second. We've just got an update on Jeremy Doku, actually. He's expected to travel to the northwest today to have a medical to complete that £55 million move to Manchester City from Rennes. That news just into us. So this Doku deal is actually moving very fast. Pep Guardiola has identified who he wants, and they are just getting on with it. One more question for you about Marco Verratti. His future remains unclear. Is there any chance he could come to the Premier League?
I mean, he's available, Marco Verratti. He's one of PSG's many undesirable players, along with Keylor Navas and Giorgio Wijnaldum and all the rest of them who are sort of training separately from the rest of the squad. That the group of players that Kylian Mbappe was in up until his recent reintegration into the first team squad. We know that there have been bids received from Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia that PSG have rejected. He doesn't appear to have a future at PSG. He's not featured in either of their first 2 league games, and we know that PSG are really keen to sort of move away from their sort of recent Galacticos era, with Lionel Messi moving on and Neymar moving on, and Mbappe having been put on the naughty step for a little bit. So, I think PSG are open to offer. The question is, are any clubs out there prepared to pay the amount of money that PSG would be looking for, and get Verratti out of PSG and back onto a football pitch.
Tom, great to speak to you. Thank you.